Hi guys, Darren Neese here. This video is a part of a series in which I led you through the process of building out your own application template, or you sought to save time and you purchased the one that I offer. I'd like to show you how to wield such an application template. I'd like to step you through each and every feature that I told you about and show you how to get the most benefit from each one. Buckle up and stay tuned to the end because this is going to be exciting. Alright, so this is the application template, and I'd like to do a walk through the features, how to use the template here. So if you go to PowerAppsTutorial.com, you go into blog, you will find a blog entry here, and it's called PowerApps Template Application Shell. So if you were to go in there, what I do is I list off all the features of the application template. So I'm going to go through these features one by one, demonstrate them, show you how to use them, how to extend them, so on and so forth. Here are the dynamic theming. So there is a screen called Copy Controls from here. So let's go to that particular screen. What this screen has that's very helpful, it's got a listing of all the themes. Okay, so if you click on the different themes, it's actually going to dynamically change into that theme. So you can see what theme that you like the best. Okay, now also there's a button down here called Create New Color Palette. So you could go in here and actually define your own. Okay, by putting in these different values, clicking the button, and then after you like it, what you want to do is just copy it and then go over to the App.OnStart and paste it in there. Paste it into the App.OnStart. So all of these themes have been defined inside the App.OnStart. So let's go there. Okay, we'll go to App. This is the start screen. Let's go to OnStart, and we will scroll down, and we'll We'll see we have a collection called Call Themes. It is created with this clear collect function, and this table function is used to actually create that table value, the collection. And then inside these curly braces, in between these curly braces, is each individual theme that's been defined within this application template. So you could define your own. You can modify what's there. You could have 200 different themes if you want. So just wanted to go through and show you these. So there are several themes here. Now each theme has a title. So this is called PowerApps Purple. And then we have a name for it, a title and a name. Now this title is actually used to tell the template which one of these themes that we're going to use. So if I scroll up to the top here, you'll see an app globals variable defined here. And you see this value here, theme key. That tells this application which one of the themes that are defined below, which one of those themes it's going to use. Okay, so let me scroll back down. Okay, so it uses this title value. So PowerApps -purple. Now, if we were to change that to this dashboard theme, it would use that instead, so on and so forth. Okay, so that's how you configure the application template to use which one of these themes. Okay, now I just told you before on this screen here that if you were to click on this button and you were to modify or tweak or create your own theme, you actually want to copy that code. So, well, let's go in here and let's look at that again. You see here's a curly brace. And here's a curly brace. What you would want to do is if you change these values and created your own theme, as you change these values and then click on this button, you run it, click the button, it's actually gonna change up the color values, and you'll see how it affects the screen. And once you get it exactly how you want it, you're gonna copy the code between those two curly braces, including the curly braces. You copy that, you go in the App.OnStart. You scroll down, okay, so if we were to add a new one, so if you were to copy the code between the curly braces, it would look something exactly like this, except the values inside here would be different, okay? And you would just paste it right in here. And of course, this would need to be have a different title, so I'd call this new. I mean, we could actually call it new theme. And this is a name. Now, if you look at this gallery here, do you see how it's got like a friendly looking name? So that's what that's used for. So we can just call this the new theme. Okay. That is how you add a new theme. And in fact, let's change the primary dark to red, green, and blue. Let's give the primary dark blue color. Okay, so we copied the purple theme, but one of the main colors is going to be a blue, just to see how this affects the theme. Okay, so I'm going to copy this title here. I'm going to go up near the top, and I'm going to go look for our app, our var app globals, and I'm going to go into this theme key. I'm going to paste it here. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this, run OnStart. You notice that? Look at that bright blue color. All right, so we actually modified that. Okay, we could go in here. So what we did was we changed this primary dark to 0000FF. Let's change something else, like the secondary dark to be 00FF00. So it's RGB. So this is probably be a green color here. It should be a pure green. All right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit this. Okay, so you see now you got blue, we got green. Okay, let's go with the primary light. Let's make primary light a red color. Okay, and I'm gonna hold down Alt, I'm gonna click on the button, and there we've got a red. So this is a crazy looking theme color. So if you ever want to tweak it here, what you do is you just copy between these two curly braces here. Okay, go up to the app, go down to OnStart. The very first one, and you know what? We could just create a yet another one. We just paste here, and we want to make sure that we have a comma right after the separating the themes that we define here. They need to be separated by this comma. Okay. Now the last one won't have a comma, of course. Okay, so I'm going to indent that over. So this one I'm going to call this new theme 2, and I'm going to give it a title of new theme 2. Okay, so there we go. So now I'm going to take the title of this, go up to the top, and I'm going to change it from that first one to the second one. Okay. Hit save. Pretty good. All right, so run OnStart. So now it's using all those colors there. Okay. So these two themes that we created may not be something that we actually want to use, but hopefully I've demonstrated how you can tweak a current theme, make a copy of it and tweak it, or you can go here to the screen and actually tweak it more, create your own. You can do all kinds of things. Now, notice when we ran that OnStart, this gallery, this was updated. So we've got new theme and new theme 2. Isn't that cool? All right. So you know how to make a copy of one. You know how to create your own. You know how to add new themes within the App.OnStart. And that's where it all counts. So you can change everything right here underneath this button to sort of play around with it. But if you actually want it to be one of the themes that your application can use, it needs to you actually need to make sure that code is transitioned over to App.OnStart so it can be defined there whenever the application loads up for the user. And we also learned how to tell our PowerApps template which one of the themes to actually look at and to use. Okay, so the next feature I'd like to cover is the weight spinner. So let me zoom in here. So we've covered the dynamic theming. Let's move on to the weight spinner. So the weight spinner, let me just demonstrate this. Click on this button, Test Spinner. So what this does is it has a transparency that pops up along with a animation, and it lets the user know the application isn't frozen. Something is happening here. So one of the big reasons how you'll use this is if you're doing some type of database transaction, if you're performing a patch or you're doing a form submit, or let's say at the beginning of a screen on visible, you might turn this on and then do some processing, and at the end you would turn it off. Okay, so let me show you what's involved here. I'm gonna hold down Alt and click on this button here. So let me just show you what's going on within this test spinner button here. There is a variable called a var show spinner. Okay, so if that variable, it's a Boolean value, so it's either a yes or no, true, false value. So if that variable is set to true, then that animation is going to show, And if it is ever set to false, it's going to hide that animation. Okay. And as you can see here, this sets the variable and it reverses the value of this variable from true to false or false to true. Okay. Let me go to, let's say, home screen. I'll go in actions and the on visible. And I actually have this set up almost on every screen within the application template. So you see there is the var show spinner. It sets it to true, then it sets it to false. Now here is a database operation. Now, because this application template, I didn't want to have any type of dependency upon any type of data source. This screen use has actually been created as a collection. And it was created, it was actually created in the application OnStart. Now, what you could do is you could add a database table or a SharePoint list called screen use, create all these fields, bring it in as a data source, and this would actually store in the database. What this does is it actually has an audit trail of how your application is being used by everybody that uses it. So if you want to know what users are using your application, this is a great tool to use that. As you can see here, I'm saving the application name. So if you're using this application template, let's say so far you create 3 different applications using the same application template. It's going to save the application name to that data source. Okay. It's going to store the screen name here. In the title, it's going to store the screen name and also the date timestamp, application version. Saves all this information, the user's email, and where in which this was invoked. In this case, we're in a screen on visible event. And it also stores a session string. Now, a session string is a variable that's set in the App.OnStart. So if a user loads up your app in PowerApps and starts to use it, there'll be this session string, which is a simple date timestamp. And then it's a way of sort of grouping a lot of these records together. Like, oh, this was them using it in a single session. If they close down PowerApps and they bring up a new PowerApps and they start using it again, it would have a separate session string. So all those different records would be grouped together, even though it was in the same day. Okay. Just wanted to point out some of those things. So this was, you could set this up as an actual database operation. So before something like a patch or a form submit, you simply set this variable var show spinner to true. And when you're done, you set it to false. Okay. And it would have the effect of, let's say this button actually did a database operation. You click it, it would animate, it would do the database operation, and then it would disappear. And that is a look at the spinner feature and how to use it, how to test it. And also one little side note here is if you were to go into this button where you create the new theme, here it is, spinner graphic, you can actually set it here. Okay, so each of the themes that I defined, what I did was I created a different spinner animation for each of those color themes. So that's all built in the application template. All right, so the next feature I'd like to walk through here. So we've done the dynamic theming. We've talked about the weight spinner. Now let's talk about the application header. So the application header, I also have a screen heading component. Okay, so these are 2 components. I'll talk about these 2 together because they're a little related in that they're a heading at the top of the screen. So do you see this purple bar? It's got the application logo. It has the application name. It has the user's name, the user's email address, and the photo, everything. So that is the application header. And then the screen header that I mentioned below that in the blog entry is this bar right here. So it's got a back button. It shows a little icon here for this page, and it actually shows the screen name. Okay. Now, let me get out of the run mode, and I will go over to the tree view and go over into components. And these are actually separate components. So here is the app header. Okay. So you can actually customize these things by passing in properties. So if I click on this application header, you see I've got some properties off here to the side. Application name, so that's passed in with a variable. All right, so let me show you the screen header component. Here it is. So it has a back button, so if somebody clicks on it, it sends them back. In fact, a lot of times you can actually specify the transition here. So you could say fade. So we'll fade to the last screen. And then this is an icon. This is an icon that I use just to represent a page in general, a generic looking page or a screen. You know, you think of a web page being compared to a screen within an application. And this actually uses the app active screen name if no other screen name is provided. So for example, you can provide, see right here where it says bar text, you could provide your own and then it will overwrite that. So that is the application header and the screen header control. And those are built in and they're on all the screens here. All right, so the next feature here is the nav menu component. So unfortunately, PowerApps does not have a menu control to use. So you either are left to build your own or use someone else's built. So I do have a component here that I've built that I really like. So let's say come side at nav menu. So here is the menu, okay, which is represented here. And you can pass things into like the menu items. So these menu items are actually created in the App.OnStart. So let me show you that. That's actually an important part of this. So if you scroll down, you'll get to, here it is, clear collect, call nav items. So again, just like how we defined themes a few minutes ago, we have these individual menu items. So menu label, home screen. So for example, if I go in here and look at this home screen, so this is the text that I want displayed for that menu item, okay? Now a menu image, so this menu can be set up to either use icons or images. So for the most part, a lot of times people just want to use icons. So this menu icon is used. But if you were to tell this menu control here, if you were to click on it and go over here, it says icons or images. So you could set this up. This is actually a global variable that is set in the App.OnStart. And by default, it's set up to be icons. But you can set that to be images. So you can either set this in App.OnStart, which I recommend doing it that way, and then it will be passed into all the screen's menus. If I were to pass in images here, then it would actually display images instead of icons. So if you have an image that you've defined for every single screen and you want to make it look really fancy, that's a great option. I've used that a lot in my applications. If I want to make something look really nice and you're getting tired of just using icons, and you want to make it look really nice, have several colors rather than with an icon, you only have one color here. So you can have multiple colors. They can look really nice. So that is an option. This menu handles icons or images. So let me show you real quick. If you wanted to use the images, how you go about doing that. Let me go into the OnStart again here, and we're going to look for a global variable set up for the menu settings. So those are all of our themes again. And here we go. var global menu settings. So icons or images. Instead of the word icons, I would put image. So if I were to go over into this component and look at, I do have an image, and for the for the visible property, it looks at this. If it says images, it doesn't matter what the casing is. If it says images, it's gonna display the image. If not, what we have are these icons here. And if you look at the visible property of this, it's looking for the icon. So either icons or images. Okay, so it's plural, either icons or images. Okay, so it is a plural word that you would need to define there. Okay, so let's go back down there. Okay, because we have the word icons here, it's going to display icons. If you use images, instead of just saying something like sample image, I just needed some type of a placeholder there. That's why I use the sample image keyword within PowerApps. It's a way to do that. You would put those real graphic image names there. Now just keep in mind, over here in multimedia, you need to upload whatever graphics that you want to use for those menu items and refer to them by name. Okay, so instead of sample image, if I wanted to use this graphics edit, I would say graphics-edit, and that's what it would use. Okay, all right, so moving down in defining these menu items. So we got the menu label, the menu either image or an icon. In this case, we have a home icon, okay? Now the show for this role. So user is pretty much any user that uses the application. So in this case, I would want that home screen menu item to be visible and available to any user that uses this application. So that's why it says user here, okay? Now let me scroll down a little bit. So we have that for home screen and new screen. But when we get down here to application administration, you notice I have a variable here called var is app admin. So only users that have been put into that role will be able to see and access that menu item. Now, I'm going to go over security roles next. So I'll talk a little bit more about that and how we set that up. Okay. Now the screen to go to, this is the name of the screen. If we go over here to the tree view, see all these listing, these are all of our screen names here. So screen to go to. So these are the names of the screens that for that menu item to go to. Okay. And then this last one here, this is developer screen. So anybody that's set up as a developer, and here it says developer screen. You see that? Also, if you want to temporarily make a menu item invisible, see it has a visible property here. You set that to false and it would hide that menu item. So I thought that was a neat feature. Just in case you wanted to hide a menu item temporarily, you can go in and change it and then it would be invisible. But generally speaking, if you have something here, you probably want it to be visible, right? Okay, so let's create a new menu item to a new screen. So let's just do that. So you could just go in here and say new screen, but why would you do that? You have a great application template here. You probably want, let's go here to blank screen. Chances are you want all these things set up, like, you know, the application header, the screen header, the menu, and everything. Okay, so what I recommend doing if you're going to create a brand new screen, you can either go to new screen, which has some other things set up for you, so some text boxes and some buttons and stuff. If you have a screen that you know that you need some of these things, then I would make a copy of this one. But if you just want to sort of start from scratch, I mean, if you don't really want to start from scratch, you create a blank screen there. But we just create a copy here. I'm going to duplicate this screen. That's what that screen is meant to be used for. And then I'll move that up to be with my other screens, so it's not lonely down there. So blank screen, let's say my new screen. Okay, I'm going to add a new label, and I'm going to call this my new screen. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm going to make a copy of the name of the screen. So I'm going to click on the name of the screen and it's going to allow me to rename it. I don't want to rename it. I just want to copy the name of it. It's selected there. I'm going to hit Control-C. Now I'm going to go into the app on start and I'm going to scroll down where I define all my menu items. And I think I'd like to put it between the home screen and the new screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some space here and I'm going to create a little comment. I'm going to hit Control-V to paste the name of that screen so I don't lose that, because what I want to do is copy this, copy the two curly braces. I'm going to hit paste. Then I'm going to grab the name of that screen. I'm going to hit Control-X. And instead of the home screen, I'm going to paste that in there. And I'm going to say for the label, see what's great about this menu label here is that we can make it be called something different in the menu than what the actual screen is named. So for example, I can say my new place, or my, yeah, that's fine. My new place. And let's say dot, you see it's got all these things. Let's click on add library. That would work. And we want it to be displayed for all users, so we'll just leave that user thing there. Okay, I'm gonna delete or remove all this unused stuff there. Okay, so now that we added something, if you change the app on start, what you need to do is click on this run on start, and you notice if you ever mess with the app on start, things will start to look weird in your application all of a sudden. For example, there's no menu items. That's because we're in the app on start messing with the code, and that's the code that actually defines the menu items here. Okay, so we actually need to rerun the app on start. We're going to click on the ellipsis. We're going to click on run on start. There we go. Now look at this. We'll run it. Click on home. Click on that. There's my new screen. Okay, so that is the menu/navigation component So you know how to go in and you know how to, well, you know how to add new screens by making a duplicate of an existing screen, renaming it to whatever you want. You know how to add a new menu item to that new screen. That's the important part with this menu, is that you know how to add and edit, maybe even remove menu items, okay? So just for the sake of completeness here in the app on start, we'll scroll down. If we wanted to remove that whole home, if we wanted to remove the menu item to the home screen, we could just remove this or comment it out and then it would disappear. So /* and then over here we can do a */. We click on the ellipsis here, hit run on start, and there we go. Now we have no way of getting back home. Well, right now we can click back a few times, right, and probably get back there, but there's no menu item to it anymore, okay? If you want, now just a little side note, whatever screen you have here at the top will be the screen that pops up whenever the application loads, unless you go to the app, start screen. Okay, and you could name it here. Okay, and this is another feature called deep linking, and that is, we'll talk about that at the end. Okay, so just wanted to mention that. All right, so the next thing that I'd like to walk through with you guys is the security groups. In any application you build, there will be at least two types of user: normal users and super or admin users. I also have another group which is for developers, myself, or any other co-owners of the app. There will be screens that only devs should use, for example, testing or troubleshooting. So let me show you this feature and how I implement it and how you can customize it. So again, we go back into the app on start. Obviously, a lot of features that start and end with the on start. So this is a good area of that application you want to get to know and develop. So if you look at original developer, so I wanted to place at the very top. So all this code here at the top, these are just comments, and it helps document the project. So the first thing that you come to is this variable here, var original developer. So you just want to put your email address in here. As you go down, there is this var app globals, and we have several groups. Well, first of all, we have normal users. Okay, so anybody that actually gets the application and opens it. In order for a user to get there to use this application, it has to be shared with them, and that is done by going over here to share. You're probably already familiar with that. If you're not, I would take a look at that. Let's go in the file menu and do share, and you can share it with another user within your organization. But beyond those users, just typical run-of-the-mill users, you've got in this template developers, app admins, and you have testers. So you've got essentially 4 different groups: normal users, developers, app admins, and testers. Okay, and in order to add or remove them from these extra 3, you simply add or remove them from these 3 groups by either adding and removing the email address. Okay, so here's that variable that we looked at a few moments ago, var original developer. So in this case, they're actually added to all 3. So here, up here at the top, I have my email address here, and they're simply added to all 3 groups. So if you want to add somebody else to any one of these 3, you add their email address here. And if there's more than one, you want to separate that with a semicolon. So I have a semicolon already included here. Okay, and that's how you add and remove them from those 3 groups. Okay, now you could add your own group. So as we go along and look at this code, we look at this feature, you'll see very easily how you can add. You could have 10 different groups if you want. Okay, and each would be added in the same way. You'd have a variable here. Okay, so we have a var app globals. That is a variable, and this is like a record. Whenever you use curly braces, that's a record type of a value. So this is a record type of value, in each of these named value pairs, these are sort of like fields or columns within a record. Okay, so you just add a new column or a field within this record value, just like these 3 are. Okay, and each named value pair is separated by a comma, as you can see here. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to go look for, okay, so here is a variable. Var user roles is a variable we pass into the menu to tell it what are the roles this user is a part of, so it knows which menu items to show or hide based on that. Okay, so as we move through this code here, down below here, we'll actually add to this string variable all the different roles that that user is a part of. Okay, and we'll just add it to the end. We'll just append it, okay? So everybody's going to be a part of users. So we initialize it with the word user in there, and we'll end it with a semicolon. So we'll separate it with a semicolon. We set up a new variable here called var is app developer. And we use this is blank to look at the value that's returned by the find function. And the find looks inside the user email. So you may or may not be familiar with the user function. The user function, you can get at a user's name, full name, their email address, or their photo. Those are the three things that you can access there. So we're going to access their email. So we're going to look at the current user's email address, and we're going to see if that email address is in that developer email. Where's the developer email? Well, if you scroll back up here, it's this part right here of this variable, this global variable here. And because we put this original developer in there, my email address is going to be in there. So if I execute and run this, it's going to get to this line of code right here that I selected, and it's going to look in there, and it's not going to be blank. Find will return the number in which it finds one string within another string. Okay, so it's not going to be blank. It's going to be probably return the value of 1. Okay, because it found it at the first character position. It found my email address inside there. Okay, so it's not going to be blank. So this variable will end up having a true value. If somebody else logs into the application, chances are they're not going to be found, so it's going to be a blank. So this variable would hold a false. Okay, now if we set it to either be true or false, then down here, based on that value, if it is true, then we're going to take that var user roles and we're going to add this little token, this little string here, var is app developer, and also put a semicolon there. Okay, so we check to see if they're a developer. If they are, we're going to say, hey, this is the application developer by using this little string here. Okay, now we do the same thing for app admins. Do the same exact thing. So we check to see if the current user's email is in there. If it is, it's going to be true. And then if it is true, if it was set to true here, then it's going to come down here and it's going to append this little token, this little string here that says var is app admin. Okay, we'll do the same thing for a tester. Now, if we scroll down to where we built out our menu down below, we were looking at this a few minutes ago. Look at this. There is a value in each of these menu items called show for this role. So if the current user has user in there, which all the users will have that, they'll be able to see that. Same thing for this new screen. Now, in order to see application administration, they will have to be set up as an app admin. So you see that? So this is the token that it's looking for to match that up. If it doesn't match up, it just simply doesn't show that menu item. Okay, and then we have one for developer. So if I run this, because I am a user, and anybody else coming to this application would be a user, you would see these two. Because I've been added as an app admin, I see that, and because I'm a developer, I see that. So let's say somebody else logs in, they're an app admin, they're going to see the first three, but not the last one, okay? Now, what's nice about this, let's say we're on a new screen here. In fact, let's use this My New Screen. We add a new button. Now, of course, to sort of touch back on the dynamic theming, you never want to add controls here to the top. What you want to do is you want to go to copy controls from here, and you want to copy the controls from this screen, okay, that already have the dynamic theming added to it, okay, and then paste it from there, okay? So we'll have a button here, and let's say this button has some app admin type of things, or it goes to a special screen that only app admin should see. What you'd want to do is you want to go to the visible property and you want to show or hide something based on their role. You go down here to the visible. We have a variable that tells us if they're a part of a group or not. So var is app admin. So this button will only show up for app admins. We can do the same thing for testers. And if you look at my blog entry here, debug feature is the next thing we're going to look at. And what you'll find out, there's a little debug feature up here at the top. And that only shows up for var testers. I'm sorry. If I click on that, let me show you what I'm talking about. I'll go down to the visible. Var is tester. So only testers are going to see that. So that's why that role exists. Okay. So I could create one for developers. So anywhere in your application you want to show or hide something based on the role, you just use those variables that are Booleans that tell the control whether true or false if they're in that role. All right, so moving on to the debug feature. So what this debug feature does is it gives the user, a tester, more information. So a lot of applications that I write and use, a lot of times I'm the only tester, but there are sometimes an app admin or somebody special. Maybe they're encountering a problem, they're encountering a bug that I can't recreate on my own end. So I might have, like, let's say the little label up here that only appears if they click on show debug info. Okay, so inside this, let's say this screen deals with a customer, and I need to know, let's say the customer information isn't popping up. Well, like what's the customer ID for that? So up here in the text, maybe I've got a variable that holds the record. I could say var record dot customer ID. Okay, now that really isn't a real variable that's been set up here in this application, so we've got a red squiggly, it's not going to work. But if it really was a real variable, I could show that there, and for the most part, nobody's going to see it except a tester. I'm like, well, go over to that screen. I could call them on the phone and say, hey, click on that little debug icon and tell me what number shows up there. Okay, so it can be used for troubleshooting. Okay, so I'm going to put this back in here, test. So what you're also going to find out while building out applications is that there are some things, let's say that you spend a lot of time on, let's say you get a gallery working just the way that you want it. It could really be anything. And let's say you just simply want to hide it, or let's say the customer for the application said, oh, we don't need this feature anymore, but you really don't want to delete it. They might change their mind. You might want to copy and paste it over on a new screen that you might work on in a month or two. So if you just want to hide it, what you could do is, let's say this label here, I don't really want anybody to see this, but I sort of like it myself, or I might want to use it for some purpose later on. I'll just go down here to the visible, and I'll say var show debugging. Okay, so for most users, they're not going to see it. But if you're in there, you're developing an application and you want it to be displayed, you just click on it and you'll see it. There's been some applications where something fairly complex was happening on the screen, and I had, let's say, 5 different buttons that did 5 different things. And based on the situation in which the user found themselves in, let's say within a workflow or some situation in the app where only one of those 5 buttons is going to be shown, perhaps I would have all of those buttons stacked on top of each other. Well, if you're in the application, I mean, you could select a control over here to the side, but let's say you've got dozens of controls and you just need an easy way to get at it. You can actually set the X and the Y value of those buttons or those controls to be different when it's in debug mode. So this debug mode, actually, there's so many purposes that it can be used for. It's really a feature that comes in really handily a lot of times. So highly recommend that you take full advantage of that feature, and that is the debug feature. So the next thing I want to show you is the App.OnStart Code. So this is pretty much a feature of any application template. So this blog entry, I pretty much list off all the things that I recommend anybody that's building an application template should have in their application template. And pretty much what I point out there is, if you go to an App.OnStart, you've got tons of things in here that eventually you'll want in every application. Every application, you want to document what the application is for, who the original developer was or is, all your global variables. Okay, like I have here, there's all kinds of things that you want to have in an App.OnStart. And this is a good example of all these things that you want in here. You know, let's say the application sends out emails and you want to put in a link that goes back to this application. Okay, well, here's a variable that would hold that. So I've got all kinds of things, all kinds of goodies in this App.OnStart that I really had one in any application. By the way, if you ever want to get this a good application link, what you need to do is go into File, Share, and then what you'll do is you'll provide it with a link right here. So this is, by the way, this is how you share an application with other users. I'm not going to work with that now, but you could just get this little link here. And if you ever do a save as and save the application with a new name, this link will change. So that's why I didn't have a real value. So I'll, hey, replace this string. There's all kinds of good stuff in here. var favor hidden nav bar. So this is another example. This is a link to the application. If you append this little thing here, what that's going to do is hide the nav bar of PowerApps. Okay, so for example, let's actually take a look at this. We're going to copy this URL. I'm going to paste it into a new browser window. Okay, now I'm going to grab this hide nav bar true. So this is great if you're constructing links to throw into an email. You could splice these two strings together. Okay, so if you notice, this is a link to this application. Now, if I go to the end of this URL, okay, and I paste in what I had in that variable there that I just showed you, this hide nav bar true. What that nav bar is this purple bar here at the top. So if I refresh this, you'll see that that bar is now gone. Okay, so if you ever wanted to do that, it's there. That is what that is for. And you got your app globals, all kinds of different values that we have in there. See the debug X, debug Y. See this little debug button here? That's the X and the Y property for that. Okay, so these are the themes. You get the menus, you have, this is what sets up the current theme, var theme. It actually does a lookup on the collection of themes based on that theme key. There are the menu items. There is that session string that we use for our screen use. I talked about that earlier. This is a feature that I actually built into each of the themes. So that's actually no longer needed. So I'm gonna take that out of there. So if you notice, I got the var show spinner. So at the very beginning, I set this to true near the top of the App.OnStart, and here at the end, I set it to false. So just in case it starts to show the first screen and the App.OnStart hasn't quite done, it will actually show the spinner while it's completing. Okay, so that feature's there. So that sums up the App.OnStart, all the different things that you'd want to have in there. And finally, we come to the deep linking. Okay, in the App.OnStart, we have this start screen. Okay, so there is a function with the PowerApps called param. Now, what you could do for this property, this start screen, you could just give it a name of a screen that you want to be the starting screen. Whenever the application loads up, you want that screen to be displayed first. So you could do that. However, and in this case, I do have home screen based on an if statement. So right now, since it's not been changed to anything, it's always going to be home screen no matter what. But if you want, let's say you have a URL, and in here you could have a customer ID set to 1001. Maybe that was the ID for a customer that needed to be displayed. Somewhere in the application, you sent out an email and you said, hey, come back to this application. Here's a link in this email to go back to this Power App. Here's the ID of a customer. So what you could do is you could say this parameter, customer ID, equals, well, you could say, as long as it's not blank, we could go to my new screen. You see that? My new screen. And then when we get to the my new screen, we could look at the value being returned by this param function. And in this case, it would pass 1001. And then that number could be used to look up the record that the email was intended to alert a user of. Okay, so that is the trick to using the param function. I'm sorry, the deep linking is to actually use this param function, and that's typically what people mean when they talk about deep linking. And I have a comment, a little block comment here at the top that explains that. So that is pretty much all of the features of the application template. I think what I might do is I might click around and show, so this loading screen, its only purpose is to hold the spinner and it's always on. So if you ever want to test out the spinner, look at it. It's right there. A video demo. So this was this is on the home screen as well. So I don't know if you guys have seen this. It is a 1 and 15-second video that steps through all the features of this application template. So that's why I embedded that inside of this template. Probably what I'll do is I'll actually embed this video as well, so people have both of them. And it's really, if you upload and install this application template, you'll see both videos. So you might be watching this video in the future inside this template. Okay, so my new screen, just flipping through these. So this is a new screen. I think I talked about this. If you want a screen with some of these controls, you can just make a copy of that. Otherwise, if you want a blank one, you just duplicate that one. I do have a screen that's got tabs. So that's sort of like a cool feature. Like you could use that within your application. Just make a copy of this screen and start from there. Application administration screen, so that's built in. Of course, there's nothing really there. Who knows how that might be used in a future application based off this application template. Developer screen, so we got buttons that will go to this screen, for example. We've got this screen, which I think it's just mostly a copy of it. It's just sort of cleaned up a little bit. So that screen could be deleted. Here, this is meant to be used. So we have the application template. It's meant to be generic to show like, okay, here's a logo at the top of the screen. This isn't branded for any particular company. We could just display that at the top and display this Mary T. Smith. This is just a stock photo of a user, and we display her name and her email address. So something else I should probably point out in the App.OnStart, go to OnStart here. If you go down, one of the first variables that you can set is demo mode. Okay, if this variable is set to true, which by default it is, it will display her information. Okay, so if I was doing a bunch of YouTube videos, I didn't want people to know my name or my email address, this is where this would be useful. Okay, but so let me show you. So probably the first thing you want to do is set that to false. Okay, so I'm going to hit run on start. And what you'll notice now is, hey, look, here's my name, my email address, my photo here. By now, everybody knows my name from all these videos, right? Okay, so this is just a place for the demo purposes so these things can be referenced. This screen, the screen use screen, for every screen, I've got this thing in here. I touched on this before where I do a patch on screen use. Right now, that's just a in-memory collection. You could create a database table or SharePoint list called screen use, add all these fields, add it as a data source, and then you could actually start using it, actually put it into a database. And this is a gallery that just sort of reads that. So if you want to go here and see who's been using the application, you can see that. That's come in handy at times for knowing who's using your application, who uses the most, that type of thing.
Hey guys, so which of these features is your favorite? Let me know in the comments below, or better yet, let me know of a feature you'd like to have or you built yourself that you'd suggest, and I'll take a look.